Well, hello everyone. Today is the show that I've been waiting for. Maybe you too, because by the time you see it, we're going to be months down the road from when we complete this video today. But I've waited 63 days with some very crude experimentation dealing with water coolants for the Beast, the project that we built last year. So let's get to it because we're going to be cooking something up today. All right, look what scenery we have behind us. Some beautiful, cool, gray mountains with some snow on them. We have got water vapor up in the air, clouds, blue sky, green grass in the valleys below. And what do we know about our water? Most life forms here on Earth require water. Not everything does, but a lot of things do. And that goes with stuff that might grow in our coolant system, in our automobiles or our computers, wherever they might be, our welders, other things that use a water-cooled water loop to cool it down. In the good old days, and I don't know if we still do it because we may be getting to giant MOSFETs that may do the same thing, have the frequency range that we can do it. But in the old days, in the old amateur radio days, in the old TV days, we had these things called klystrons, which were big vacuum tubes for the finals on the radio stations and whatever, the transmitters. And they would get really hot because they might run 10,000, 25,000, 50,000 watts. It depends on the amplifier. Is it a class A or AB or whatever class C amplifier? And they would be a huge vacuum tube like you might see in a guitar amp that you may be familiar with, except it'd be large, massive amounts of kilovolts potential on the tube, and it'd get really hot, so it'd run water through it. Well, the thing is, I'm sure you know, water makes a good coolant, but it has a problem that pure water, whether it be distilled or reverse osmosis, pure water has no minerals, and it does not like that. I mean, it's not sentient, but it doesn't like not having minerals in it. It's highly reactive. It's corrosive on its own. So it doesn't conduct electricity, but it gets right to that straight away and tries to start eating whatever you might have. So if you have it in something like copper or aluminum radiators and stuff like that, or you have metal parts, nickel parts, whatever you might have, there's different levels of reaction that the water will try to attack and eat. Right? So we don't like pure water for that purpose, but we do like our water not to conduct electricity if we're going to use it around anything with electricity in it, because we don't want it to conduct electricity, but we do want it to cool. But the fact that it doesn't have minerals in it makes it want to get minerals in it, which will make it want to conduct electricity. So one of the reasons we change our waters out quite frequently are to keep things from growing in it and keeping the inorganic reactions down. So that's where we're looking at distilled water. What can we put in our distilled water to make it take care of it? Well, we don't want something to grow, so we have to have some sort of a biocide. Well, you can have oxidizing biocides and non-oxidizing biocides, and they work with different types of organisms, right? Well, the oxidizing type, if it works to oxidize with the organism, it'll probably also oxidize with the metals that we have in our system, so we might not want to do that. So what's the number one thing we can do to limit the amount of biocide we need in our system without making it want to eat our little components? Well, we can use a non-oxidizing stuff, but there's one more simple thing that we can do. We can keep it in the dark, just like a mushroom. Keep it in the dark. Well, mushrooms are one form of life. Fungi are one form of life. Many of them, I don't know that all of them are or aren't. I'm not a fungologist, right? I'm not a dendrologist. I'm not a tree guy. But your common mushroom, the fungus, doesn't need no light. So they would still grow in darkness in caves, like a lot of the mushrooms that we eat are farmed that way. And light doesn't really hurt it. It's sort of like a facultative bacteria that uses or doesn't use oxygen. It doesn't necessarily bother the mushroom. So if we can eliminate any of those species of organisms that do need light, we've automatically reduced the amount of biocide we might need in our system. But what do most gamers want to do? Two things which are against my personal philosophy. We'll talk about that now. Well, personally, I like colors, light, reds, blues, browns, all the wonderful things that we have before us. But a lot of gamers buy very expensive coolants, and worse than very expensive coolants, a lot of them will have dyes in them, and dyes will then stain their tubings. And of course, they want their tubings to be what? Clear, or mostly clear, so that they can see the dyes in their water when their water rush, and you get the idea. So it becomes counterproductive. Now, if we have enough dye, perhaps what we can do is we can keep the light off of any kind of spores or bacteria that might be floating inside of our water. Maybe we've got enough dyes that it kills it. But if we got clear tubing and light goes in it, or we have any kind of a connector that actually puts light into the water so it shows up good, like in our pumps, we're probably going to be giving anything that needs light something it needs, some food for it to eat. So I like to keep things dark. Now, the other thing a lot of gamers will use, and people who build custom loop systems, is they'll use hard tubing. Now, you'll notice if you watch me do the Beast, I didn't use hard tubing because, I just never know. Maybe I need to pull a video card or need to change an NVMe, and I've got a Gen 5 that's being cooled down with a little water block. Well, if I need to pull that off, if I got hard tubing, I automatically got to break it, whether I'm in a cycle of a water flush cycle. My 1 year is normally what people would use. I would go 1 year, would go 6 months perhaps on some things, but I don't have light in there, so I'm choking that off. I have opaque tubing, and it's flexible tubing, so mine is going to be a little bit more user friendly to maintain, but yet it's big and it's heavy, and I'm going to have to cart it into the kitchen area to drain the fluid out of it to replace it. So I'm going to keep it in the dark. I'm not going to use dyes. I'm not going to use any kind of light into the water, and I'm going to do what I can to keep things from growing. But I need a biocide of some sort, ideally, and I need also something that will help keep the non-organic corrosion away. The regular copper, aluminum, the type of things that will work with my metals to cause a reaction that are not necessarily living. I need to make sure that we have a non-oxidizing type of fluid in there. And we know from the previous discussion, water by itself doesn't conduct electricity, but it sure likes to eat stuff up. The oxygen and hydrogen like to react in a very elemental state with the material. So what are we going to do about it? Well, if you watch the videos, you know the Beast takes 1.5 quarts of fluid, right? Well, go online, look up the cost of computer loop system coolants, and you'll find a lot of them may be as much as $32 a quart. And I would take 2 quarts every time, so it'd be $64 every time I wanted to change. And I might get dye problems, other things that actually cut the effectiveness of the coolant itself. So why not just use the minimum that we have, just plain straight water? Well, we would use distilled water, and I go down to the Dollar General store and buy a gallon of pure water for $1, maybe a little bit more than $1. Now, it's distilled water. What you want to look at is distilled water and reverse osmosis water. Both of them, when they come out, they've been cleaned of minerals, and they are very aggressive towards copper and aluminum, things of this nature. So if you're getting drinking water, you need to be careful to make sure that you don't get a water that has had minerals added back into it. Normally it's calcium. They'll take all of the stuff out through distillation or reverse osmosis, and then they'll put some minerals back to make it taste better, right? So you don't want to buy just any water that you find in a jug in a grocery store. You want to make sure it's either pure distilled and no minerals added, or it could be reverse osmosis with no minerals added. Then we want to put something in it to help it be more efficient cooling and at the same time not corrosive to our system. So I got a product. I'll pull this up before us, but guess what? It's going to disappear because we're at green screen and this particular product is itself green, so it's going to look like a magic bottle. Look at that. You can see me through it. Yeah, look at my little face. All right. Now this product, I'll put a still up here and a picture from where we did our initial testing back in February, where we took pure, this is called, let me see if I get to pronounce this right. This is Rhizome's Hyper Cool. This is an automotive product, Hyper Cool. It says on the bottle it will run up to 30 degrees Fahrenheit cooler and reduces head pressure, head temperatures by 75 degrees if we use this. And what it is, when I called the company, I said, well, what's in this stuff? Can you tell me what's in it? They wouldn't tell me. Now it's in a plastic bottle, yeah, right? See, it's in a plastic bottle, so we don't have to worry about it reacting with probably a lot of plastics, but it may work with some type of polymers. I don't know. It says reduces engine temperatures, prevents overheating, provides maximum corrosion protection. That's what I'm looking for, corrosion protection, because I'm going to put it in pure water. And it has no anti-boil or anti-freeze properties. It's just a surfactant, because I talked to the guy at the company and I said, what is this product good for? Well, he said, well, it's for cars. I said, yeah, but I don't want to use it in cars. I'm looking for something to add to some distilled water for my computer. And I know it's not rated for that, but I'm also not wanting to pay $64 every year just to change the diapers on the beast. I want something that will work. And before we ever got to specialized products, we engineers used other products from other industries to do it. What does your product do? And it was very sketchy on it, and he described it, well, it makes the water wetter. I said, that to me sounds like a surfactant. And I think he was surprised that I was familiar with that word. But I asked him, is it oxidizing or not oxidizing? And all he would say is it doesn't corrode it. So that would suggest whatever's in this magic green bottle that is now turned red, whatever's in that magic bottle is not likely to cause more corrosion. And yet, because it's a surfactant, it's going to break down and improve the way that the distilled water takes the heat off. It does have a little bit of a dye in it, which you can't see with my green screen, which is now red. But it's just very light dye, very thin, very, very, very light, highly viscous type of viscous or very low viscous. Yeah, high viscosity is a high viscosity product, and it's made for cooling systems that are aluminum and copper. And so we did a test. Let's just dunk a couple of pieces of aluminum and some copper. Here you see a picture of it right before you. I took a typical shot glass. I've got some leftovers from the good old days or whatever it was, and I took some 12 gauge wire, I think it was in the attic, and I stripped off the insulation, pure and clean and bright and shiny copper, and I bent it up and put it in the shot glass. And then I thought, well, what do I have for aluminum? So I went down in the garage and I got some aluminum rivets, and I found, I got some little washers that are aluminum, and I took those aluminum rivets, washers, and put them in there, and I poured pure this Rhizome's Hyper Cool Super Coolant additive, pure additive only, no water, nothing, just pure coolant. Put it in that shot glass, and I put a piece of duct tape over it to see if I could see any reaction, and I didn't get any. And I wasn't expecting any, having talked to the manufacturer and then looking on the website, which you can do for what it's used for, and they talk about it's used to have corrosion protection. So I thought that would be good for the base juice in the system. But I also want to look at what could I use possibly for an antibacterial, antiseptic, whatever you might, something that is cytotoxic to organisms. What could I use? So the first place I looked was back in my refrigeration days, back when I was a young man. We had these things called chilling towers. Wet tower, where we actually used the swamp cooler effect, as you're familiar with, right? Because when water goes from wet to evaporation, just like our bodies when we sweat, it takes amount of energy with it and it cools. So we will have wet chillers that are often open to the atmosphere. Obviously, they have to be open to the atmosphere because we're going to blow air across them on these rooftop towers and whatnot. And the evaporating, that swamp cooling effect takes things away. But that also means that they're open to every spore, mold spore, and bacteria in the world. And so those coils, those cooling coils, are often made out of the same thing that my reds are in my beast, right? They're made out of aluminum and copper and things, and we don't want to eat those up, but we want them to kill all the slime and algae and stuff out of that water loop as it sprays over that chiller. And so I looked for some additive for that, and guess what? You can't find it in any small volumes because these are big commercial operations, and even my local refrigeration contracting supply house is geared more to residential. So it really, hey, appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, if you will, subscribe to the channel, either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, which this appears in. And if you can, check the notification bell or settings to make sure that you get notified when new videos are posted. Appreciate it. Supply house is geared more to residential, so it really wasn't the industrial side, and I couldn't find any additives for less than like $100 to $300 for a gallon that would last me 1,000 of my lifetimes, considering I'm only needing 1.5 quarts at a time. So what else could I use? So I thought, what kind of custodial products, janitorial products, kind of household cleaning products do I have access to, which are antibacterial, cytotoxic, kind of cleansing, viral killing kind of things. And I came up with a product that I have in the lunchroom called Zep. It is Zep, the lemon flavored, not drink it, but lemon smelling kind of antibacterial, antiviral stuff that you can buy anywhere, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot. Is very, very common. And when I looked at the bottle for this, I'll put some pictures up if I haven't already in the post-production. The question was, is it corrosive? Because looking straight at the label, it says it's used for hard surfaces. I don't really see anything that suggests that it is or isn't, but I do have some active ingredients on the label, and that's what we want to go look up. And we did, and we found out after calling the company as well to find out how corrosive could these potentially be. They said, well, they can be corrosive. Okay, can be. How much is it? I mean, because you don't put an anti-corrosion warning on it, so it must not be too strong. So we did a second experiment with Zep, pure Zep, in another shot glass, prepared the same exact way. I'm going to give you a little video right here so we can go see what that looks like. We'll be back right after we run that clip. Now here are our two samples. What we're going to do is I guess we'll look at the Hypercool first, which is in our little Bama jar glass over there. Let's take a look. All right, now we can see through here. You can see, I don't know if I can point to this or not. All right, I got me a chopstick for a pointer. All right, see this right here? Right here, this is one of those aluminum washers for rivets, and we see some other materials. I have some O-rings from the connectors that we would use in our system, and we have a piece of tubing over here, and we have some little pieces of copper in here as well. You see it on the bottom, and you see, if I can keep this straight enough with my hands, you can see there's absolutely no reaction whatsoever with the Hypercool, which is the anti-corrosion material we put in there that makes the water wetter or acts as a surfactant. This is after 63 days of being in this system. All right, so I would say that would be okay, which is good because the beast has been running with that. Now this one's going to be a little harder to see. All right, it looks like we got some pretty colors to it. Now you can see on the top, I've had to cover that back up. I actually used the Zep after looking into its ingredients, the antibacterial, to see would it react. And you can see, in fact, it did to some extent. Now we lost some of the volume and we redosed it with full strength type of ZEP in there to see if it would, how much it would react with the aluminum and the copper. And we see that it did some. I don't know if you can see, it looks like we have a little bit of snow at the bottom. Now I'm going to call that flocculation. If you're ever around a water company, a water cleaning plant that produces the water for your area, you might find out that if they pull river water out, they'll put something in it, and what it does, it kind of works like a dust magnet in the water, and it starts pulling all kind of stuff to it until the particles get extremely heavy, and they build like little snowflakes in the water until they sink to the bottom. That's why I would call this flocculation. But we've done the same thing in a little smaller volume. As you can see, we've taken some copper wire, some O-rings, some materials that we would use that's clipped off of the tubing that we used, and we have some aluminum rivet washers in there. Now, if I'll have to turn this up on the edge, we see that the copper did in fact react. It's dulled a little bit, but it's not eaten up by any strange event of the imagination. But if I turn this around, you'll see that one? That's pretty black. Now, why that particular aluminum washer is blacker on one side, we probably had a chemical reaction with either some oil on the washer or not. But it went so far until it stopped. You see, there we go. You see a little bit of black flecks growing. I didn't alcohol off the washers, so that just may be places where the washers themselves didn't have enough finger oil or whatever. So our ZEP as an antibacterial, you can see a little bit of the material floating in the water there, the fluid, the ZEP, the cleaning solution. So that may or may not be good for my radiator. I didn't put any in there, but it's interesting to see. So when I looked at how the copper and aluminum behaved upon instant contact with the ZEP, it did actually work on it pretty quickly. We started to get a chemical reaction. Now it did stop, and we've waited 63 days, I guess it is, for this to eat at the copper and the aluminum, and it's limited pretty quickly. I did lose some volume in that glass, which I refilled with fresh ZEP, covered her back up, and it's been stable since then. So I don't know if we have sort of a surface treatment action going on. You know, like anodizing aluminum, if any of you guys are hunters and you have receiver that has been anodized. Anodizing is, you put a charge on it, and what it does is it actually changes that structure in the acid bath that it's in, and it actually just, it works sort of like paint, but instead of being a paint that you spray on or cook on or whatever, it actually changes at the atomic level that outer layer of aluminum when we anodize it to make it then porous, and then we dye it with something, and that makes it take on the colors that we have for a lot of our stuff. So I don't know how deep that reaction goes. I didn't use it. I just figured, well, it's good information to have. So you might ask, well, did you bother to pull the MSDS? Now, if you don't know what MSDS is, MSDS stands for Material Safety Data Sheet. We would often use this, I don't know, fire departments, health departments, building group, any number of people that want to know what is it we're dealing with. You'll often find also the dot triangle that tells you what the material is and how it relates in terms of its corrosivity. Is it flammable? Is it corrosive? Is it reactive? How, that kind of thing. Gives you a good idea what it is. Yeah, we could do that. We looked it up, and we called the company and talked to them, and they said it had the potential. So when we read the jug, we can actually Google those active ingredients, because remember, it is like what, almost 98+% inert ingredients. So there's not very much in it. I'm still not recommending you put it in your water loop, but it's probably not like battery acid when we look at what we observed over 60 63 or 64 days of its direct contact with that material. You might ask, well, what about using other compounds we have around the house, perhaps like iodine or alcohol? Why couldn't we use some of those? And my answer is, well, we got to see what they do. Well, we know that alcohol or rubbing alcohol is often used as a solvent. Takes off sticky stuff sometimes. It thins things down. It thins oils out. Does all kind of stuff. We might have a reaction with maybe some of our seals if we used alcohol, because again, it's used as a solvent. What about then iodine? Well, iodine itself is cytotoxic. It will kill stuff, sure enough. It'll kill it dead as a bag of hammers. But iodine and metals are generally non-playmates. If you put iodine, say, on a piece of aluminum, like if you were to get yourself some pure iodine and a couple of those aluminum rivets put in there, you'll watch it'll probably react pretty quickly. So iodine's not good for that. So you can experiment with your equipment, your expensive equipment, on your own time. I'm just showing I'm using the Hypercool is as a non-corrosive or a corrosive inhibitor that also makes the water wetter. It makes it a surfactant. It drops that surface tension and helps the equipment work fairly well. It's made for copper and aluminum environments, as we often have those in automobile radiators. I didn't have a problem using it. I'm not suggesting you do, but you can figure out what you might want to do with some distilled water to keep your distilled water from eating your radiators and your water blocks. So this has been very long. It's an explicated show where we talk about how we think and why. We've talked about a wide number of things. Realize that I am not a chemist and I don't play one on YouTube, but I did want to see what I could do to bring down the cost and how I could keep things from growing in the system. First is keep the light off of it, use opaque tubing. I like the flexible tubing because it allows me to service my equipment without breaking the line and dripping all over everywhere. And I'm not using highly dyed fluids, so I don't have to worry about getting on the floor or the carpet or the desk or any of that kind of stuff. And I don't have to worry about it staining my tubing. So I'm quite happy with what I did. And I don't know if you would be. I don't recommend anything you see in my videos on your system in case something goes bad or badly. But anyway, it's just what I did. And we've had some little samples sit there in the fluids for 63 days. Depending on when I actually finish this up, maybe 64 days. But you get an idea. You can definitely have a cleaner, more fresh system that has its water changed out on a regular basis without spending $64 a year, depending on the size of your system, and having to replumb the whole flipping machine because you turned your plastic red or green or blue or whatever. Anyway, just my thoughts, and they're here for you at no cost. Appreciate you. See you next time. I'm sorry that this will actually be scheduled out sometime in August or September, but that's just when it comes due. Because we've got a lot of content sitting out there right now. Appreciate you. Appreciate you watching more than you know. Do the click and the subscribe thing. Hit the notification bells. And it would help me a lot fight the algorithm beast that is YouTube. See ya. Bye.